السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الكوتشي تعني البدوة أو الرحلة في اللغة الدارية أي الفارسية المحكية في أفغانستان، والكوتشيون هم من البشتون من جنوب أفغانستان وشرقها. هم مجموعة اجتماعية لا عرقية، وإثر تشجيع قوي من جانب حكومة طالبان في الماضي، وعلى الرغم من كونهم من البدو التقليديين فقد استقر كثيرون منهم في شمال غرب البلاد في منطقة كانت تقليديا تحت سيطرة الأوزبك والطاجيك. تأثر الكوتشيون على نحو كبير بالنزاع والجفاف والتحولات الديمغرافية في البلاد، لذلك في الوقت الحاضر لا يزال بضعة آلاف فقط يتبعون سبل عيشهم التقليدية المتمثلة في الرعي البدوي، وأصبح آخرون مزارعين أو استقروا في المدن أو هاجروا. ولعل من المحتمل أن يكون أكبر عدد منهم في صحراء ريجستان جنوب أفغانستان. ويمثل الكوتشيون جزءاً مهماً من التراث الثقافي لأفغانستان. لقرون هاجروا عبر البلاد بحثاً عن المراعي الموسمية والطقس المعتدل. كانوا التجار الرئيسيين في البلاد وربطوا جنوب آسيا بالشرق الأوسط. وقدمت الماشية التي يمتلكها الكوتشيون مساهمة مهمة في الاقتصاد الوطني الأفغاني. على الرغم من تاريخهم ومواردهم التقليدية، فإن حالة عدم الاستقرار المزمنة في أفغانستان تركتهم بين أفقر المجتمعات وأكثرها تهميشا في البلاد. وفيما حاولت الحكومة الأفغانية دمج ما يقدر بنحو 1.5 مليون من الكوتشيين من خلال منحهم التمثيل البرلماني والسماح لهم بالوصول إلى برامج المساعدة الحكومية، لا تزال المجموعة تفتقر إلى الخدمات الأساسية مثل الرعاية الصحية والتعليم، ولم تتلقى سوى القليل من المساعدات الدولية. مريم سليمانخيل النائبة الأفغانية السابقة عن الكوتشيين في البرلمان الأفغاني، ونائبة رئيس لجنة الكوتشيين واللاجئين وذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة والشهداء، الحائزة شهادة جامعية في الاتصالات مع اختصاص في علم النفس من جامعة لوس أنجلوس كاليفورنيا، تحدثنا أكثر عن وضع الكوتشيين اليوم وعن التحديات في ظل حكم طالبان، ولا سيما فيما يتعلق بحقوق المرأة الأفغانية، وماذا قدمت في هذا الصدد، ولماذا غادرت بلادها بعد سيطرة طالبان عليها. أهلا بكم إلى حلقة جديدة من الداخل، معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. مريم Sulaimangkeel, former member of Afghanistan's parliament representing the Koochis or the nomads, and the deputy speaker for the Commission of the Koochis, Refugees, Disabled and Martyrs, a former senior advisor for international relations for the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum. Welcome to الداخل from the inside, Mariam.
Thank you for having me, Zainab.
Pure pleasure to have you always. Well, allow me to ask you my first question, Mariam. To what extent today are the Koochis or the Afghan nomads mourning a vanishing way of life? What, in your opinion, Mariam, has destroyed the Koochi lifestyle?
I think more than anything, what's important to know is that because of their lifestyle and because on both sides of the Duran line, the tribes live, they've been misused, they've been recruited on the front line of terrorism. They've been used as shields. And these are people who have been kept away from education, they've been kept away from resources, and this has been systematically done to basically misuse them in the name of an extremist force that stems from Pakistan.
Now, let's try to further detail about this particular issue. The Koochi nomads are struggling and stateless in today's war-torn lands. tell us more about the challenges that this group of the Afghan fabric is facing today.
Well, this group of people makes up over 7 million people in Afghanistan today, Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, and Arab. And they were the main traders of the entire region. They connected Central Asia with many of the regional countries. At this moment today, because of their lack of education, because of the lack of access they have, they've been put on the front line. And in regards to what puts us in danger the most is the fact that our women, in our culture, we would wear hijab, but we don't cover our faces. And even the last time that the Taliban took over our country, they could make everyone wear burqa, but they couldn't make Kootchi women wear burqa. It was strongly within in our beliefs that women are strong and women have a right to work and women are matriarchs of our families. So what puts us in danger are other states that want to misuse Afghans. They want to misuse the word of our religion and not allow women to be like yourself, a journalist now, influencing others. So that's what's ruining the Kootchis from a foundational aspect. Right.
Even if you go back to the religion, to Islam, Islam does not compel women to cover their faces completely.
Exactly.
You said something very important, is that the Kootchis were being used by extreme forces. What did you mean by that?
What I mean is that you take a group of people who don't have access to become literate. They make madrasas that are, there's 40,000 plus madrasas that are on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And in those madrasas, the Islam that you and I have grown up with and learned, the beautiful Islam that we know, that doesn't exist there. What exists there is telling them that every Afghan is a kafir, and that the government there was a kafir, and in the West there is kafirin, the women should have no rights. And it's basically factories of extremists and suicide bombers, which are worth more than their nuclear arsenal is at this point. So what they do is they make madrasas on the border to attract these people to send their children over there and recruit them under a different Islam that we know of. What we don't want is, we don't want the name of Islam to be tarnished by these type of actions that could affect every Muslim in the world.
Sure.
That's our main goal. It is happening, but it is not natural to my country. It was something that we were fighting against, and we will keep fighting against.
Sure. Now, while the Afghan government has attempted to integrate the estimated 1.5 million Kootchis, you said 7 million Kootchis, but before, by granting them representation and access to government assistance programs, the group still lacks key services such as healthcare and education, and has received little of the international aid that has helped lift perhaps other Afghan communities out of poverty. For some Kootchi leaders, Kabul needs to take urgent practical steps to preserve their way of life. In your capacity, مريم, as the Deputy Speaker for the Commission of the Kootchis, what steps have you taken towards bettering the living conditions of the Kootchis?
Well, I had to leave Afghanistan the day that Kabul fell because of the Taliban. I was on a list to be killed.
But before,
we tried to do a lot. We were, every time I built schools, we built women's clinics, we built roads, we built water wells for them. But what kept us was the war. And the war was systematically, not in city centers, but in the outskirts where the Kootchis lived. That's where the recruitment, where they were being used as shields, where they were being terrorized the most, was in this group of people, within these groups of people, where the government couldn't have full access to. So that's what kept us there the most. It was very systematically planned to keep these people the furthest away so their recruitment can keep happening.
Right. Allow us, Mariam, to stop now for a short break, and then afterwards we will continue to delve more and talk about the status of women, not just in Afghanistan, but also in the Kootchis, but after the break. إذا فاصل قصير ونعود. لا تذهبوا بعيدا. أهلا أهلا بكم من جديد. مريم سليمانخيل, former member of the Afghanistan Parliament. Welcome back, ma'am. Well, مريم, ostensibly life for Kutchis is difficult, especially for Kutchi women. Prior to you joining Parliament, you were teaching women within the eastern and southern provinces of Afghanistan about safety, awareness, and psychological health. In a nutshell, how do you define the status of women in those districts?
It's very difficult. Number one, these are the breadwinners of their homes. And at the same time, you're dealing with a community that doesn't really want to see women at the same. So it's a tug of war. And these women aren't giving up. You see them becoming matriarchs and elders. And the amount of respect that even the Talibs have for the elder women of our families and our tribes is unbelievable. The strength within the women of the Kutchis, I believe strongly they can be the way for peace in Afghanistan.
Now, Ms. Sulaimaankil, you have always been active and passionate about women's rights in Afghanistan and has held a strong voice and has always held a strong voice against the abuse towards women, no matter where it came from. Yet, women in Afghanistan have always been paying an exorbitant, hefty price just for being women. Tell us more, please.
I don't even know where to begin. This is such a deep rooted issue. During the Taliban regime, there was 70,000 women being taught in 34 provinces amongst 40 million people, and they were only allowed to go to school up to 6th grade. Within the last 20 years, we have millions, countless women who have been educated. They're now in journalists, they're ambassadors, there's ministers, there's MPs such as myself, businesswomen, and on a grassroots level, we have tribal elders who are women. So we've come a far, far way, and we were working on laws. We had passed the EVA law, the Violence Against Women law, and we were on our way of passing a law for children, the rights for children, and what age a child is. So we were making huge strides towards a brighter future for women and children in Afghanistan.
Right. In the sense, Afghan women today are no longer the same as Afghan women of the 90s and prior to that. Do you agree?
I 100% agree with that.
Allow me to ask you...
They're educated and they know their rights.
Sure. So why did you leave your country, Mariam? Why not stay and struggle more for the sake of women of your country? I know you've been under massive stress and, threats also.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. I wasn't planning on leaving. I've been fighting and I've been protesting against the Taliban, against extremism, and against Pakistan sponsoring the Taliban, giving them safe havens, giving them shuras, financially providing for them, medically providing for them. I've been one of the most vocal voices in Parliament in regards to this. 2 days before Kabul fell, our intelligence called me and they told me that I had 72 hours to leave because I was on a list to be kidnapped. When my family heard about this, I was forced on a plane by myself, crying the entire time. And ever since, I left with nothing. And ever since I've left, I've been trying to find a way back into my country.
So
I'm still fighting it. I'm going through, I'm lobbying, I'm speaking as much as I can until I can get back.
Sure. Now, last August, after gunmen attacked the home of the Afghan defense minister, thousands of Afghans decided to show their vocal support for their government's security forces. You were there among the protesters, despite all the dangers, Mariam. Why was there anger towards Pakistan in the demonstration? I mean, many observers and experts, they note that there is a difference between Taliban Pakistan and Taliban Afghanistan.
Yeah, number one, it was becoming very blatant, the support that they were receiving from Pakistan. We had found Pakistani soldiers amongst the dead of the Taliban. We had found Pakistani identification cards amongst the dead of the Taliban. We were finding lists and we had proof of pictures of Taliban soldiers being treated in Pakistan. It's been, I think, 15 years that shelling has been happening in Kunar from across the border of Pakistan, and no one has been saying a thing about it. Pakistan is very blatant about in-depth policy of what's happening. And the difference is, to me, all Taliban are bad Taliban. They're extremists and they shouldn't be allowed. They should be all labeled as terrorists. But the Pakistani Taliban, which are TTP in Pakistan, who are carrying out suicide bombings and doing the same thing as the Afghani Taliban, they're considered extremists and they're considered terrorists and put on blacklists, while the Afghan Taliban, who've killed hundreds of thousands of people throughout the years, and injured them and ruined lives, they're not considered terrorists. So this is a shock to me. We shouldn't make a good Taliban and a bad Taliban. They're all bad.
But allow me, and these are things that we are reading a lot about, and we talk to experts and observers, and this is what they say, that the Taliban of the 90s are different today from the Taliban of today, in their approach and their policies, even in the prospects of how they are going to deal with the issue of women and technology. So do you agree with that?
They are different.
There has been a kind of modification, perhaps, in their modus operandi.
They're different in one way, in my eyes, and that's that they've invented child suicide bombers. They have killed even more people. The suicide bombings alone, we'll just put that on one side. Why they're allowed to rebrand and make a 2.0, I still don't understand that. I don't know if there was corruption. It was obvious there was corruption in the Afghan government. But was the alternative people who invented child suicide bombing? I don't believe that was the only alternative we had. But this was the best benefit for Pakistan. It was giving them an entire state to breed terrorism. And they won in this.
But Pakistan hosts a huge number of Afghani refugees. So what's the point of trying? I mean, this is going also to have backlash or backfire into Pakistan. All this kind of terror.
There's research that's being done on this, and I'll share the paper with you as well, that cites the exact amount of money Pakistan makes off of the refugees in Afghanistan, not just from the international funds, but from illegal trafficking of our lumber, of our gems, of our natural resources, of our coals, of our talc that comes across the border every day. They're making money off of that. Just on a simple thing like Western Union, when a family member sends their money to the Afghani, wires money. They make money off of that. So in many different ways, Pakistan is benefiting off of saying that they're hosting that many refugees.
Right. Now, a well-informed observer notes that the US and the UK are positioning themselves to spearhead a humanitarian aid program that, in political terms, will also inevitably open the pathway to their engagement with the Taliban government. The idea is to normalize, quote-unquote, relations with the Taliban at a working level and build mutual trust to a point from where formal diplomatic recognition of the government in Kabul can follow as a logical step sooner rather than later. So, مريم, it seems that Washington and London have decided that it is possible to do business with the Taliban government. What are, in your opinion, the major scenarios that the future might hold for your country?
I'm really sad to hear about this.
That's a big, deep sigh.
The minute that the Taliban gets recognized and the way that they're demanding that funds be released without any type of conditions, without any type of monitoring, how do we know that the money is reaching the people and not to terrorist organizations to inflict terrorism across the world? The thing is that this entire issue is not about Afghanistan alone. This is an issue that affects the entire world. And yes, I'm afraid that this is going to spread. They're doing jihad against the entire West and other Islamic countries. If you look specifically, there's very few Shia voices within our Afghan government. There's no women voices. And the UK and the US should first see that this is an inclusive government before they even think about recognizing the Taliban as a government. I'm completely against the recognition of them as a government.
Right, but you're speaking about, this kind of extremism that is moving and spreading across the world. Are we talking about ISIS or are we talking about the Taliban in this sense? I mean, ISIS, there are many observers who note that ISIS has been funneled, the fighters have been funneled from various regions in our part of the world, from Syria, from Iraq, from elsewhere, from China, from Russia, into Afghanistan in order to also, as we said, inflame a kind of civil war among the Afghan themselves.
That's exactly what's happening. It's not just ISIS. There's over 40 different terrorist organizations in Pakistan, and now their Mecca is Afghanistan, where they're training everyone is Afghanistan. Now, whenever the Taliban are speaking about changing, the original members of the Taliban don't agree with this. And what happens is the Taliban government is saying, we'll kick them out. We don't want these extremists in our government. They're going, and instead of raising the white flag, now they're raising the black flag. And so we're seeing a huge amount of ex-Talibs becoming members of ISIS and Daesh. So I don't see the things getting brighter anytime soon.
Right. Allow me to ask you my last question briefly, if I may. The Taliban has not given any statement on what they want to do about women's rights, minority rights like the Jews, the Sikh and the Hazara, who just recently suffered greatly as an ISIS-K bomber killed dozens at the Hazara mosque in northern Afghanistan. What are your expectations for the Taliban modus operandi towards the protection of these denominations?
You're watching them get killed. You're watching them in Daikundi, the Hazaras, be taken out of their homes and be killed. You're watching people who stood with democracy going missing, and the news isn't talking about it. You're seeing women who are suffering greatly. Our Sikh community, they had their Gurdwara attacked and their guards tied up, their security cameras broken. They're under threat. There's no one right now. There's a Panjshiri genocide that's happening. The Achakzais of Kandahar, there was a complete genocide happening towards their entire tribe. If you were from that tribe, there was a large chance that you were going to get killed. And for about a week, every day, tens of bodies were being found all over Kandahar, but no one's talking about that. And they will work silently. No one is allowed to make videos there. If you're picking up your phone or a camera, the Taliban have been given orders to break the camera, get rid of the phone, because they want to show an image to the world that's not what really is happening on the ground.
Right. مريم سليمانخيل, former member of Afghanistan's parliament representing the Kutchis, a strong voice to be heard. Thank you very much for joining us from Geneva.
Thank you, Zainab.
Always a pleasure to have you, مريم.
Thank you for having me again.
والشكر لكم مشاهدينا الكرام على طيب المتابعة. للتفاعل أكثر تابعونا على صفحات السوشيال ميديا، وحتى نلتقي من كل فريق عمل من الداخل من كل الميادين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.